I'm here to talk about part 2 of political pecking order, and what I'm going to talk about is the fact that for us to overcome the current situation, the problems that we have concerning our civilization, which everybody can agree right now is falling apart, it's being taken apart because it's effectively coming to the end of its life. And what I mean by that is the Constitution that created the existing structure that we have now is failing. It may be better to say that it actually never really worked the way that we think that it does and the way we think it's supposed to. It was created during a time when a structure such as that is what was needed. We have these kind of structures in civilizations simply because that's what powers the civilization. It's what allows the civilization to come together and exist. History is changing now. Technology and just the evolution or the advancement of civil structures, ways of doing things, living together and so forth are changing. And we're going through a transitional period of time right now. So this second in our series is really here, it's aimed at kind of removing some of the misconceptions and some of the misguided ideas that we've all been indoctrinated with. We've been indoctrinated with these over a period of time in order to bring about cohesiveness of our nation and our society. But at the same time, we've been lied to, and we're discovering now that it doesn't work. And if you think our Constitution can be restored and bring us back to some sort of glory, I'd only ask, and I'd ask you to ask yourself, when is that going to start? Because we've been at this for an awful long time now, and it just seems that things are getting worse. So one way that you can gain an insight into how to fix the problems that we have is quite simply to go back into history. If you want to troubleshoot, you want to fix a problem, what you do is you retrace your steps to the last time it changed, and you look at how it worked before that change was brought about. So that's what I'm doing. I'm deconstructing American history, at least the last couple hundred years of it. And we're going to go back and look at how our nation and how it came about, first of all, how it was founded, who founded it and why, and second of all, what was different about their lives in terms of their struggle against tyranny and struggle for their freedom and so forth, and examine. And what we're going to find is that prior to the establishment of the Constitution, we had a different way of viewing government, of viewing our own freedom and so forth, and we were considerably less constricted. So basically what I'm saying here is that we go back and we deconstruct how things were prior to the American Revolution and the establishment of the Constitution. In my opinion, we were much freer back then, before the shackles, and I do mean shackles, of the Constitution were created and put on us. And if you don't know this, you need to think about this, and you need to realize that the Constitution created the government. That's what it did. It's nothing more than a set of bylaws for the creation of a civil structure, and that civil structure is what we have today, and that is what is creating all the problems, all the angst of the American civilization, the wars, the taxation, the immigration, the litany of problems, the disintegration of our society, our being preyed upon by foreign powers and people with money and so forth on the American civilization is as a result of the fact that we have a government that is not doing what we expect it to do. Keep in mind that that government was created by that Constitution, and it does operate within the bounds of that Constitution to some degree. And what we need to do is rediscover our status. And our status is that of sovereigns. In part 2, we discuss why we are sovereigns and what that actually means. So take a look and enjoy. Where did our nation come from? Have you ever asked or wondered? You were taught a very limited version in school, meaning they left an awful lot out and mostly misrepresented other important facts. The nation was formed by white people from Europe who left their familiar shore without any assurances of what lay ahead. Landing on a virgin coast, they sacrificed and overcame much to carve out a nation. Beginning in the mid-16th century, the original generations of Americans arriving from Europe founded our nation. They were the progenitors of the nation, and we are their offspring and the rightful heirs. In essence, they were sovereign, so they reigned over their own affairs. During this time, there were many European powers at war for the domination of the New World. However, for the most part, their lives were unaffected by the conflict, so they were free and relatively unmolested. They were left to manage their own affairs however they saw fit. They were used to being kings of their own domain in their own right. Again, this means they were sovereign, answering to no king, no state, and no bureaucracy. As a nation, we have forgotten this. 2 centuries later, it was only after King George of England started to lay claim to what he believed was his domain and interest that early Americans became politically active. He attempted to claim their land and wealth by falsely persuading them that they had no sovereign right to the land, but were merely the subjects of the king. Provoked by King George's aggression, they rose up to secure for themselves once again that which they believed they already had established. They fought the War of Independence and overthrew their oppressive foreign usurper, and thought all would be good from then on. Most of us were taught this history. However, it seems every American generation since, as heirs to the American nation and its civilization, remain in the same struggle for exercise of our liberty. It seems the American Revolution and what followed, although seemingly good for a while, only laid the foundation for what we the people struggle against today. What do I mean? Most rational, original Americans today agree and believe that the government we created in our recent past, which proceedeth forth from the U.S. Constitution, which we also created to serve, in belief that it was necessary to secure our liberty in perpetuity, has now become overbearing, and that our liberties are suppressed by it, and that it has gotten too big and responds much more to large money interests than it does to the voice of we the people. So how do we reconcile and correct this unacceptable situation? Firstly, by realizing and acknowledging that the government was created by the Constitution. This must be understood. Both are the same. The evil we perceive in the government cannot escape its origin. It cannot be separated from the Constitution which created it. Does that mean that the Constitution is evil? No. It means it was created with flaws which have allowed the evil to invade, fester, and infect. It means that it is inadequate for the expectations of a nation such as ours. We correct it by realizing what we are and what power we have. What we are is called a sovereign body, and understanding the power therein tells us how to fix it. So I'm going to give you the definition of the word sovereignty, of which we derive sovereign. And it is derived from basically 2 Latin roots. One of them is the word super, that's the Sover part, super, which means above, and regnum. And regnum is usually associated with a monarch, a king, and a king can be thought of as a lawgiver, someone who issues the law. So it doesn't mean above the king, it means above the law. So as sovereigns, that means we're above the law, and we're going to get into why that is. And it's very easy to understand and illustrate what is meant by that. As individuals, we are subject to the laws, and we created the Constitution, which basically was the establishment of law, and we set that body or that law above the individual. But collectively as a body, that is what we the people are. We are a sovereign body. We establish the law. We can then reestablish the law, and we can recreate it. So to sum it up, the word sovereign means above the law. Next, in part 3 of Political Pecking Order, we're going to examine a sovereign body. What is a sovereign body? What does it do? How does it work? Why is it important? And how will it help us recover and restore our nation? We need to realize that the founders of our nation were a sovereign body. They acted as a sovereign body. The founders of the Republic were more or less above the law simply because there was no law, there was no policy. They, as a sovereign body, were not under the Constitution. There was no Constitution. When the Constitution was created, it was created at their will for their purposes in order to create a system which could be used to govern a civilization. Therefore, they were above it. They created it, and they could destroy it. We have that same status today. So we'll be looking at what a sovereign body is and why it's important.